Spurs v Man United. Jan 1976. In this video we rewind to 1976 and another infamous did they, didn't they incidents. Man United's Red Army were well known for their invasions at away matches, especially at London grounds, where their ranks would be swollen by the Cockney Reds. So at Tottenham's White Hart Lane, sometimes 5,000 Reds would turn up. But did Man United's Red Army take the Spurs' home end, the Shelf? Well, we have the stories from both sides, and the categorical answer is, well, you'll have to listen, won't you? Here's Spurs Yid Army member Ronnie, who told us, "I think we were underestimated by a few firms, as many little firms of Yids would terrorize away firms on the walk from Seven Sisters. I always maintained that even in those days, if we were more organized and didn't do our own group thing, no one would live with us. We had real bods in the numbers, but the times we did pull it together, i.e. Chelsea Cup game and Sloane Square, the Blind Beggar, West Ham League Cup meet-up, Kev's passing at Old Trafford, Birmingham, the dawn of the Zulus, when we came in behind them, and the second division year, when we never took a backward step anywhere for anyone. There were a couple of disasters too, but few and far between. Forest and the amount of locals who had an unfortunate swim in Trent the year we came back up will live me too. Man U never ever had an easy time at WHL and have been turned over there a few times in numbers, but they certainly always turned up, never shied away, and have always been game, but they never took the Shelf in 76. Plod put them in there after a crash barrier broke in the Park Lane. They were getting attacked by Spurs all through the game with Plod all around them, and the Man United mob coming from the Paxton to join those in the Shelf got ruined by Spurs. They got smashed all over. It was always mental, that fixture at the Lane. We really had a thing for the Cockney Reds back then. We hated them. You could always tell the difference between Cockney Reds and real Manx then because of the dress sense. Man United always came with intent consistently. Best outside of London, always a fixture to get excited about. This was 76, I think, when you could walk around the ground, and that day was a war zone. You're right, you can see the faces of the Man Ud on the Shelf. They look a bit spooked. And also 79 too outside, that was insane. And also they got destroyed outside in 84. The Spurs bloke got killed on the escalators when it went off inside Seven Sisters Tube after the home game with the Cockney Reds. In 80 or 81, I think. Someone hit the stop button in panic as it was all going off, and everyone fell and got crushed. And one geezer died in that crush. Was at the game, but not on the escalator. We were elsewhere on the High Ard, helping Manchester fans home. Sad day, as no one should die at football. The next time we went to Old Trafford with serious intent. We took a mob of a 1,000 by coach with K, and there was 100s and 100s of us on the intercity train, took it to them all day. It was going off everywhere, and the Cockney Reds bottled it in the scoreboard when we went in there to greet them in their section. They didn't want to know, and got the OB to remove us all back into our away section. Another huge, unstoppable mob turnout for us that day, which was great, because in all honesty, it had come out on top a few times up there with their huge numbers before, even though we weren't shy. But not this day, Red Army member Tony told us. Tottenham was always a difficult place to go from the mid-70s onwards. Before that, we just took over the place, but around 75-ish, I think it was, Spurs started to get organised, leading to the 76 and 79 war zones, and any match in the 80s, basically. The first time I ever saw a Tottenham firm was around 76. This is the Shelf incident that everyone has an opinion on. As I was there and as I was a leading lad at the time, I can tell you the story in all its brutal honesty. We arrived at White Hart Lane a bit delayed after several train delays at Euston and Seven Sisters. Massive Red Army, around 2,000, are now queuing to get into the away fans section, but a sold-out sign was put up and the shutters came down. So we had no choice, really. We all started to jog to the nearest open turnstile and none of us had a clue where we were, to be honest. We just went into the first turnstile around the corner from where we were originally. Some others carried on and tried to get in other areas of the ground. Some succeeded, some didn't. Once we got into the ground, we realized our mistake. It was the shelf, Tottenham's home end. We were at the back of it. It ran lengthways down the pitch. The Red Army was in the away end behind the goals. There was only about 200 of us in total, and certainly enough to cause mayhem. But we didn't. We hid our colours, not knowing how many Spurs would be in that end, but guessing enough to cause massive problems for us. Some of group pushed their way down the terracing, and in among the Spurs fans, trying to be incognito, but were soon spotted by the Spurs lads. Then it all got a bit nasty with fighting among everyone and anyone. I don't really know who I was hitting, but I think they were Spurs, because there were also Cockney Reds in the ground. We were doing okay, but then some Spurs reinforcements arrived from another section of the stand, and we were now on the back foot. We got smashed, to be fair. Spurs had far greater numbers. We had no choice but to jump down into the lower section of that stand and then into the already packed away end. There were sporadic bouts of fighting in other areas, but eventually settled down. At full time, the away end emptied into this sort of bottleneck area outside the away end. The shelf was towards the left and Spurs were waiting en masse. We ran at them, and they ran at us, backwards and forwards. But as more United came out, we managed to push them back. There were so many Reds that Spurs just couldn't make inroads into our tight pack. Now we had a long walk back down to Seven Sisters Station. Spurs were waiting on the main road, thousands of them, but we had this massive mob. I mean, there must have been 3,000 by now, and not a backward step was taken during this long walk. Even though we were under severe attacks from Spurs, especially at one corner junction near to the building site, they were able to arm themselves with bricks and stones. Of course, we returned the favour and forced them back down the road again. It was chaotic. Spurs were well organised inside the ground, and outside they were too. But eventually, we managed to get back to the station in one piece. But it was a very violent place, and Spurs were a major firm of the day. A bit underestimated in my opinion, and this was a picnic compared to the 79 match, but that's another story for another day. We thank Ronnie and Tony for their recollections. It's clear that the Red Army did get onto the shelf, but more by error than any attempt to actually take it. When their top boys are claiming it was all a mistake, you can guarantee that's the truth. But Hart Lane was always a nasty place to visit unless you were a top firm. Even then, it could still go wrong, as it can at any ground, especially during the 70s. That infamous long walk back to Seven Sisters train station was always full of surprises and sometimes mayhem. Happy days all the same. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to comment, like, share and subscribe, as it really helps our channel grow.